All right, well, I have 9:30, so I would like to call this
Recording
meeting.
in progress.
So call the meeting to order for the Arkansas Plant Board Pest Control Committee. First things first, as a reminder, this is being recorded. We have a couple of committee members via Zoom, so just so you're aware. And the owl will pick up on side conversations and so on. Again, just want everybody in the room to be aware of that. So with that, I'd like to call the roll of committee members. Mr. Bruce Alford. Here. Mr. Garrett Frost. Here. David Gamble. Here. Travis Center. Here. And Mr. Kyle Baltz on Zoom.
Here.
And John Beerbaum on Zoom.
Here.
And the fourth, that's all the committee members. Like typically we go have introductions of everyone in the room. So Ms. Martin, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Travis Martin. I guess we're meeting today about a property that I own, 7805 Campground Way in North Little Rock.
Tim Adams, Adams Pest Control. Jerry Lyons, Adams Pest Control.
Brad Nichols, Pest Control Inspector.
Andrew Simpson, Pest Control Inspector Supervisor.
Sherry Slifer, Department of Agriculture.
Susie Nichols, Department of Agriculture.
Linda Lefty, Department of Ag.
Scott Bray, Department of Ag.
Mark Shell, Department of Agriculture.
Lexi Felton, Department of Agriculture.
Yolanda Fall, Department of Agriculture.
Seth Dunlap, Arkansas Department of Agriculture.
Linda Alford, Lafayette County, Arkansas.
Thank you all. Do we have anyone else on Zoom? Yes, no. All right. With that, I'd like to ask Scott Bray to come forward and kind of give us some background information that's relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If y'all don't mind, I'm just gonna pull up to the table. So the plant board does have a position that is established for the pest control industry, but it's currently vacant. Typically, that person would serve on this committee and would serve as a subject matter expert when we hear or discuss cases associated with the pest control industry. But again, that position is vacant. So staff and we got a lot of experience here. We'll try to fill in any blanks and help you all along with your questions. Just for clarification, this is not a hearing. This is not an administrative hearing. This is not related to an enforcement action that we're bringing before you. We are here at the request of the property owner, Mr. Travis Martin. He introduced himself a minute ago. He wants to address you all as a committee. For just a really high level overview, y'all have already probably received some of this information, but in case you forgot, and we do not have a lot of pest control related cases that come before y'all. So it's been a while. So our pest control program, the primary purpose that we do with this program is we do licensing, pesticide use oversight, and we have consumer protection aspect to the program. It has some very specific contract rules associated with it when it comes to termite work. And those contracts usually require the coverage of new termite damage. In fact, 80% of contracts issued out there are required to have some sort of new termite damage coverage. But that being We do not,
Lynn Dollar accidentally muted. Sorry, I interrupted. Zoom's muted, sorry.
are we good to go? Okay, I'll continue. So let me find a place. Based on these rules, these termite treatment standards, if we find that they're substandard, it's not considered a violation. It's just considered a substandard condition. And the way we all have always addressed that is through either a letter of correction or a substandard report, which we have historically referred to as pink slips because we send them out on pink paper. And basically, they just require the pest control business to make corrections based on what our inspector finds and what we determine is substandard, and that could include the repair of damage. If the business refuses to make those corrections or refuses to cooperate, then it can elevate to a violation. And there can be civil penalties and license revocations and things like that, consequences that would come through this board for final approval. As I stated, most of the complaints that we respond to and most of what we deal with from a consumer protection point is termite related and termite damage related. You know, we always do our best to determine who's responsible for that damage, and we historically have had pretty good success resolving these issues for homeowners, which means they don't have to hire lawyers and they don't have to go to court. We can pretty much settle it out for them at no cost to them, but it sometimes takes time. That being said, as I stated, it can get very complicated when it comes to damage. When a pest control business issues a contract, if it's a pre-treat, it's a no-brainer. Any damage from then on, as long as it stays under contract, is a pest control business's responsibility. But if it's a pre-existing structure, when they treat it, then there is a possibility there was pre-existing damage in the wall somewhere hidden. So what required then is the pest control company is required to disclose in their contract and on a graph the location of any pre-existing damage. That's visible damage. So there's also the chance of hidden damage that they can't disclose, they can't determine. And a lot of times when we get involved in situations, it's because some deconstruction was going on, somebody was remodeling, somebody was doing something and they've uncovered some damage. Sometimes when we have come into the situation when deconstruction has already happened, walls are torn out, baseboards are off, things like that. We see the damage, I find active termites. We had no record, no inspector visual inspection of what it looked like prior, so we can't determine if there was visible evidence ahead of time or not. So I say all this to let you know that it can be complicated, and it's just not as simple as it looks on the surface. That being said, I think it's time to go ahead and start the meeting. Again, I just want to emphasize that this is not a hearing. We are here at the request of Mr. Travis Martin. He wants to bring before y'all his case. And if you look at the agenda, it's going to start with a case file summary, and I think Mark is going to do that instead of Seth. And then we'll move on to Mr. Travis, and then Adams Pest Control will have their opportunity to speak to you all, and then we've got committee discussion, but feel free along the way if you have questions. This is very informal. Just ask your questions along the way, and it's totally open for discussion all the way through. So, said, Mark, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Case file progression document for this, November 7th, 2024, the case file was started at the request of Travis Martin. On November 15th, 2024, Ryan Nichols, one of our pest control inspectors, inspected the property belonging to Travis Martin located at 7805 Campground Way in North Little Rock. A statement from Mr. Martin was received along with photos and videos of what appeared to be some type of ant. It couldn't be determined from the video or pictures what type it was. No active termites have been observed by staff during the inspection or in the evidence Mr. Martin submitted. On November 19th, 2024, Jerry Lyons with Adams Pest Control submitted a statement about the damage that was found being moisture damage and then hidden damage. He stated that Martin did not want to call him again and did not want him on the property. On November 26th, a letter of correction was issued to Adams Pest Control of North Little Rock to correct outside grade issues, to treat porches and ground slabs, masonry voids, and outside foundation walls as per what the letter of clearance stated the property was to be treated with. There was some confusion in place on whether this was an existing structure already under contract. And it was determined that it was not new and was a pre-existing contract. Andrew Simpson, our pest control supervisor, spoke with Jerry Lyons of Adams to get all the property history after the letter of correction was sent. He stated that the property was originally treated around 2008 and had been under contract prior to the clearance letter that was issued. Signs of treatment were present, but some of the ground slabs had been resurfaced at the time. And, let me see, I lost my place there. Have been at the time of our inspection compared to the other areas of concrete around the building that had not been resurfaced and had old drill holes. Mr. Lyons stated that the employee who issued the contract is no longer employed with Adams. He does not know why he put the treatment, why he put that the treatment should be made or was made in the amount of 35 gallons of Center Fire 75. There was no proof that a recent treatment had been made to the property at the time of the Arkansas Department of Agriculture's inspection of Mr. Martin's property. Then on November 27th, 2024, Mr. Martin sent an email stating that he did not agree with the staff's decision and listed his complaints and his request for a hearing before the Pest Control Committee because it believes that Adams Pest Control should be held more accountable for their actions. On December 2nd, 2024, Seth Dunlap emailed Mr. Martin to see if he was willing to work with Adams to see if he could come to a mutual agreement that would satisfy both parties. On December 4th, Mr. Martin emailed a response that he did not agree with Adams' resolution and wanted them to pay for all damages and what it cost him to get the building back in compliance. And on January 13th, 2025, Seth Dunlap contacted Mr. Martin back to see if any progress on negotiations had transpired. And he said they had not. He stated he wanted to have a hearing with the board and his case file be heard. He did not want a refund of his money or the property treated, but wanted Adams to be held accountable for having their license revoked. On April 3rd, April 3rd, 2025, Mr. Martin sent an email to Arkansas Department of Staff to follow up on his previous request. Again, requested a hearing. And then on, a pest control committee was decided to be the best way for Mr. Martin to be heard. On April 16th, the pest control committee meeting was scheduled for today.
Are there any questions for Mark while we got him here? And again, we can always follow up. All right, so that, we kind of got that summary of the case file. So, Mr. Martin, you wanna?
Thank you. I prepared a statement, and so I'm just gonna read that. I would like to thank the plant board this morning for giving me the opportunity to share my concerns with Adams Pest Control Service at 7805 Campground Way, which trail property purchased on September 11th, 2024. Our initial plan was for a minor remodel, including floor removal, patching and painting, minor electrical and HVAC adjustments, and an exterior refresh with an initial approximate budget of $50,000. However, during initial cleanup, we discovered significant termite damage upon removing a partial wall in the area intended for the new warehouse. On October 10th, I contacted Adams Pest Control of North Little Rock to request an inspection. The following week, Mr. Lyons from Adams visited the property with no prior notice. He stated that the damage appeared to be primarily water damage with a few ants and indicated there was nothing that they could do. At this point, we had owned the property for over 30 days. Mr. Lyons never mentioned that they had not treated or were in the process of treating the property. On November 7th, while preparing to replace the vanity and toilet, we discovered that the entire back wall shifted, revealing severe rotten framing with active termites or ants. I contacted Adams Pest Control a second time. Mr. Lyons came to the property. He acknowledged the termite damage, but immediately stated that their policy doesn't cover hidden damage. At this point, I informed them that there was nothing further to discuss. Still, at this point, no mention of non-treatment or any attempt on his part to do so. The reason that I want to say that is because by the Arkansas state law, they have 30 days to treat after I assume ownership of the property. That's stated in their contract. And this is 60 days in and there still has been no attempt to treat. Further investigation uncovered additional termite damage in both offices near the front door and the lobby. As a result, we decided to remove all sheetrock and insulation. This revealed a complex repair process. Temporary walls were necessary and exterior walls must be lifted to replace the deteriorated base plates. Given the building's age was over 40 years old, and the exposed structure, North Little Rock City Code now requires all electrical, plumbing, and mechanical systems to be brought up to current code. Following inspections and approval, we would need to re-insulate, install new sheetrock, tape, mud, paint. Given these findings, I contacted the plant board, the governing body for the pest control business, and met with Inspector Ryan Nichols on November 15th. He thoroughly documented the property with interior and exterior photographs and collected soil samples for pesticide analysis related to the chemicals Adams Pest Control claimed to have used in their contract. On November 18th, Inspector Nichols informed me that he had spoken with Mr. Lyons from Adams Pest Control. Mr. Nichols mentioned taking soil samples for analysis, at which point Mr. Lyons admitted that the termite treatment had not been performed. Mr. Nichols requested a written statement from Mr. Lyons and asked him to contact me to find a resolution. I have provided Mr. Nichols with 2 written statements from my perspective, which was included in his report. I spoke with Mr. Lyons on the 19th of November. His proposed resolution was to solely perform the termite treatment at that time. I explained to him I was unwilling to proceed with any treatment by Adams Pest Control due to the falsification documents provided to the mortgage and title companies. These documents falsely indicated that a termite inspection was completed on August 19th and the termite treatment would follow within 30 days of ownership by October 11th, 2024, mandated by Arkansas state law. When we submitted our plans to the city of North Little Rock, our initial intentions were never to strip the building down to studs and undertake comprehensive code upgrades. While I understand Adams Pest Control's contract clause regarding hidden damage, the central issue is that Adams Pest Control could not have performed a legitimate visual inspection if they did not properly assess the property. Consequently, they could not have accurately represented whether the damage was visible or not. Adams' falsification of this inspection to the mortgage company significantly the negotiated price of the building and would have substantially influenced my decision to purchase the property. Additionally, you will see that the plant board's report, Adams Pest Control contract, which contains a demonstrably inaccurate drawing of underestimating the square footage by 1,000 square feet. Basically, there's a drawing that Adams Pest Control submitted that's not even correct with the structure of the building. That's why I'm refuting the fact that they even did the inspection. To summarize key issues, while we acknowledge that Adams Pest Control contract states they are not responsible for hidden damage, Adams Pest Control signed off on mortgage documents clearing the property of any visual damage. Pest Control did not conduct a thorough visual inspection as visual damage was present in the attic and accessible area according to their definition in their contract. They had no intentions of completing the termite treatment as stated. Even after 2 separate contacts on October 10th and November 7th, they never disclosed the lack of treatment. It was only after being questioned by the plant board inspector on November 19th that Mr. Lyons offered to treat the property. At this point, I explained to Adams Pest Control, that he was no longer welcome on the property due to breach of trust and failure to follow proper protocols and timelines and charging for services not rendered. My purpose in contacting the board is to advocate for implementation of better checks and balances for pest control operators. As this account demonstrates, it would be easy for an operator to neglect contracted work, particularly when new property owners rely on pest control companies of assurance of an honest evaluation. While I cannot definitively say the outcome would have been different, this situation has resulted in a financial impact of nearly $200,000 for my small business. In closing, I respectfully request the board consider the following: implementing a verification system to ensure operators are adhering to proper protocols. And also, I would ask that the plant board be willing to enforce consequences on Adams Pest Control for their actions in the hope that these situations would not come up again in the future. Thank you for allowing me to meet with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Do you have anything further you want to add at this point? Any questions for Mr. Martin? Hearing none at this point, I'd like to now hear from Adams Pest Control. I don't know which gentleman.
I'll talk.
Here.
The structure at Campground Way, when I was listening to Mr. Martin there, it did get inspected up on time the clearance letter was issued. We did make the mistake of not knowing the guy. I don't know why he did it. He's no longer with us, but he did do the inspection. He was properly trained. He did the inspection in there, but when Mr. Martin called me, it was rolled up as a new policy. So I didn't look any further. When I realized we started looking into it further, that's when we realized it. I offered to treat the building. I offered to treat the building 3 or 4 times. I told Ryan, I told Seth that we would treat it, not a problem. Just let me treat it, we'll treat it. The damage was hidden. First time I went out there, it's water damage, had carpet ant damage in it, and then you could tell there was a bunch of rats in it. The second time that I went back out there when Mr. Martin called me, I went out there and you could tell where they broke the sheetrock off the wall and exposed it. And at that point, it's hidden damage. We can't report to you what we cannot see. But the inspection was done and we're still willing to do the termite treatment on the home, on the structure. I mean, if you guys got any questions, just ask me, but I mean, it's hidden damage. That's what we disclosed. I mean, when we write a clearance letter and and the house is already built, we can only do a visual inspection. Everybody lets us in, you know how you get in these buildings, real estate owners, the real estate agents all the time lets us in on a closing.
When did y'all first treat the building?
It was treated in 08. It was treated in 08. So like I said,
It wasn't treated when this receipt was.
no, no.
Center Fire 75 was actually not applied.
Do what?
Center Fire was applied.
No.
Then why is it on the?
Well, I don't know. My guy don't work here no more. I mean, he doesn't work with us. That's why we will go ahead and treat it. We was willing to treat it. It was, I don't know why he wrote it up that way. I can't answer that. But I offered, and I'm still willing to do the treatment on the structure. That's not a problem. But now there has been some alterations made to the structure, if I'm not mistaken. There's been some concrete poured around it. I'm not for real sure, but it may be a little more difficult for us to do. I don't know how thick the concrete got poured, but we're willing to do it, and we've been willing to do it.
How long has this technician not been employed?
He's been gone since, about October, November.
And you said that contract was written up as a new structure?
Not a new structure, a new policy.
A new policy.
And I don't know why he did it that way. I can't answer that because he's not with us. But I mean,
Center Fire is what we're using now.
Center Fire is what we're using. In 08 was probably, I don't know, it's been so many different ones. It's kind of.
And Ms. Blind, it sounded like you've been to the
Yes.
facility.
I've been there twice.
And according to what Mr. Martin said, there was some visible damage in an accessible area. Would you disagree with that?
No, there was no visible damage showing anywhere.
What is your definition of visible, what are you responsible to look at when you go do a visible? Are you, if you were gonna do it on this building, would you raise the ceiling tile and look up there? Or you go, nope, don't have to. What would be your?
No, I mean, there's no need to get up there. Subterranean termites in the state of Arkansas, the majority of the time when you're doing an inspection, you're gonna have some damage down low. So there was no damage showing at anywhere in this structure at all, on down low or anywhere. You can run up there because now the termites, the subterranean termites is gonna eat paper off the sheetrock. That's what they eat on the sheetrock, because you're gonna be able to see visible lines. Whenever you shine your light down through the wall right there, you're gonna be able to see it spider webbing up if it's going that far up there. So in a lot of these this structure here, I can't recall, you can't get up there and crawl around in this structure because you're gonna fall through. You see what I'm saying? Some structures, you can get in attics, but this, like this one here, and if I'm not mistaken, that one over there, you're not gonna be able to get up in the attic and crawl around. Cause you're gonna come through the deal, cause this right there is hung up by those little metal strippings and wire.
So on this, when you purchase property, just correct me if I'm wrong here, but you got to come back 30 days after closing. Is that something at the request of the purchaser? Is that something that is policy to do?
Well, when you write a new policy,
Is that a new policy or a?
no, when we write a new policy, you've got 30 days after closing, after you receive your paperwork, to go back. Sometimes we get covered up, to get a little busier and it goes a little bit, but all termite companies run into that. All termite companies run into that. Like I said, we're willing to treat the building. That's not a problem. It's not gonna cost anybody anything. But I don't know why, Gavin wrote that up like that, but it's still yet, when you write a clearance letter, you go back to the clearance letter that was written. Even if before, you still go back to there. All of this has never been shown, it's never been exposed. And to now, somebody would have seen it by now. There's no signs on the outside because the way the slab is built, there's no tunnels on the outside. And in the bathroom, it looked like it come up to me, it was come up through the plumbing. We can't see underneath that toilet or any finished floor or any wall right there. So the termites, they come up through any crack they get. And subterranean termites, it takes any wind, light, will dry them out. They have to go back and forth to the ground in order to get moisture to come back up, and because they got to go back to the ground. So they're going to stay everywhere they can. They're not. I always tell people they kind of try to hide from you because they can't stand any light or air because it dries them out. It kills them. So that's why they go back and forth. So that's why I call them sneaky or whatever you want to try to do, get in the cracks and comes up where you can't visually see them a lot of times, unless they either storm out or they come out with some damage that you can see where they've eaten on the paper of the sheetrock.
How old is the structure?
86.
It's built in 86.
How long has Adams had the contract on the structure? 2008.
2008. And there's been many alterations made to this structure since we've had it. At one time we think it was a restaurant, then they divided it up and there was 3 different business type things going on, or 3 different rooms. They'd had all the walls put up in it. This structure has been redone, 3 or 4 times that I can recall. That we don't put that in our reports, somebody went in there and knocked this wall out or whatever, unless they do an addition on the outside of it that's gonna cause any problem. But this structure has been, it's been gone through it's been the business that's been in it, it's been changed, and they made alterations to whatever they need to do for that business.
Does Adams Pest Control do any other insect control with this particular property other than termites?
Just
Or is it just termites?
Just termite.
And just for clarification, the agreement, the contract word that I see, Mr. Martin, was this with you? It says prepared for Marie Watson.
That was the other owner.
The previous.
This is seller.
That was a seller.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I.
If I can make one comment, if that's okay. This form, this is, in Adams Pest Control's, form NPMA 33, important consumer information regarding the scope and limitation of inspection. A visual inspection was conducted in, let me skip to the back. So anyhow, including attics and crawl spaces, which were permitted during this inspection. The structure is not a lay-in ceiling, it's sheet rock, it's truss, it can completely be walked, I've walked it. The damage was, all above the bathroom, the entire system was eaten up. So that should have been found. Also about the concrete, we did lay a new asphalt driveway, but that is not covering up any existing concrete. And that's aproning around the building. And then also too, you can look back 15 years on Google Earth and the structure hasn't changed in the last 15 years. So
It's the interior that was changed. And did, Ryan, when inspected, did you go and add it?
In any of the inspection, any live termites found?
I thought they were termites. They have told me that they're,
Carpenter ants.
Carpenter.
They'll-
But-
I'm sorry.
But also, I will say, in your documentation, it says that your coverages list a whole bunch of insects besides termites.
And my main concern really is the fact of this bill that shows a treatment was made because of a mortgage or whatever, a property ownership change was not done. That's my main concern, I guess.
I tried.
The whole document.
Well, we're talking about this, in this $289 that you said wasn't done. I assume the company was paid to do something that wasn't done. Y'all refunded the money to the party?
We ain't done that. We tried to treat the property. We tried to treat the property on numerous occasions. I told Seth,
Not since he bought it,
yeah,
this invoice.
This document.
But to clarify, he only did treatment after the plant board contacted him 60 days after I purchased the building.
Yeah, our understanding what we're getting out of this. There was, your company, Adams, said it did a treatment. And the invoice date is 8/19/2024. Y'all are sitting here saying it wasn't done,
No, that,
but the bill I assume was paid to Adams, even though the treatment wasn't done, or y'all be harassing them for money.
we don't do any treatments until after closing. So.
But what is the-
That was in.
His stuff starts in November. Travis's. This invoice is in August.
9/11.
Why was this treatment that wasn't done asked for, or why was it supposed to be applied? Did it have to do with the sale, or did the previous owner say, hey, I got bugs? Why was this billed but not done? What was the reason to trip the treatment?
So this was written up as a new policy. And come to find out it wasn't. If it is not a new policy, if it's an existing policy, you don't do a treatment.
But bill for it.
Well.
no. With that price right there, that right there is almost what I call a prorate price. It's like it was under policy whenever they figured it. Is Adams Pest Control, when you call in and you want a clearance letter on your house and you're under policy, well, you gotta provide 1 year's worth of termite insurance. And then we charge $100 for the clearance letter because all the paperwork and stuff that we'd have to go and do another inspection. But is it $264? That comes out to be like it's a prorated, like it's a previous under policy. Now, if it would have been not under policy, you'd have been looking at that structure right there, you'd have been looking $450, $500, give or take a little bit on our fee. That right there is what, when that price was figured, it was on a pre-existing contract. And I don't know why my guy wrote it up. I wish I could, I'd like to ask him, but that's, I mean, we were still willing to treat it.
Can I clarify just a couple things?
Yes,
Maybe that'll
please.
help. Seth, you guys help me because I've been around for a long time. So what we're talking about is a clearance letter. In Arkansas, clearance letters are not required through us when a building is sold, but typically the lender requires it. So if the lender requires a clearance letter, then our rules kick in as to how clearance letters are issued. And when a clearance letter is issued in Arkansas, the property, if it's a new property to the business, they have to do a treatment and they have to offer a 1-year coverage, 1-year contract to the new owner. If the company already has it under contract and they've already treated it in the past, they're not required to retreat. They're just required to issue the inspection report and a 1-year contract to the new owner. Typically, I know some of the contracts say this and say that, but a standard practice is they treat 30 days or so after the closing, because sometimes the deals don't close and it all falls through. But typically, you know, they do get out there and they treat.
I will state and add something that was brought up. There is no requirement in the amount of time that they have to treat after closing in our law. But if they do state it in their contract, that's what contractually would obligate them to doing so.
So I do, section 3 of their contract does say Adams Pest Control will perform termite treatment 30 days after closing is complete per Arkansas State Board regulations. So.
Right, I don't know if that's misunderstanding, but it's not in, I mean, it's not in our law or regulations.
I'm just going by what's written.
Right, no, I understand, and I don't know what their statement there, if it means that they're going to do it as per what our regulations are.
And
or
also,
within that time frame, but our time frame is not that, but they stated that in there, so.
I don't want to get off track, like I'm not refuting there were termite or ant damage. What I'm explaining is they didn't follow through on anything that they billed the previous owner for. They didn't follow through on what they submitted to the mortgage company. There, and what happened is I got a clearance letter. I trusted them. I bought the building and then I ended up spending $250,000 on the building to remodel it. That's where I don't care that there's ants or termites. What I care about is I didn't get a fair shake on their assessment of the building.
Again, guys, we can only report what we see. We can't see inside those walls, none at all. If it's not visually showing, we can't report it. I mean, there's no way, because we can't see it. That's what they've explained to you, the hidden damage.
Did anybody ever look in the attic of that building, if it's accessible crawl space with conventional construction?
No, the state didn't even look inside.
Well,
It don't, go ahead.
There weren't signs to lead us up to
Right.
a higher level. We don't go to a higher level.
And
But it does say in your contract that you do that.
I was just saying why we didn't do it.
if I can just have a moment, as far as when we did the inspection, the structure had been deconstructed, so we couldn't make a determination based on our evidence, whether or not there was responsibility of Adams or not, because we had no evidence to show that the damage would have been visible or not visible, and there was no active termites or active carpenter ants or other wood destroying insects at the property at the time of our inspection.
Is this the drawing you were referring to?
Yes, sir.
Earlier that you think is inaccurate?
Yes, sir.
What is the accurate square footage number?
It's about 2,700 square feet.
Okay. With significantly,
It's 93 feet long, 27 feet wide.
Okay.
And that hasn't changed in as far back as you can go on Google Earth. 15 years.
Yeah, because so again, I'm just looking at this agreement on count. Because their square footage says 1392, so.
Yes.
Again, I don't know where those numbers are coming from, but yeah.
And we did handle these issues through our normal procedure that we have to go through, that's dictated by the regulations. It's not considered enforcement action, even in letters of clearance, until it reaches a third substandard report. And then that would allow it to be where I would have to bring it before y'all, the board or the committee, and then hold a hearing of why the company hasn't corrected substandard termite work on the property. And it would be a hearing that would be going through if we went through the entire process and none of the work was completed, such as the treatments. Obviously, the square footage was off. I don't think 35 gallons would be enough to do a structure that size. I'm pretty positive that is an agreement there. We know that it's understood that the gentleman that wrote this is no longer with the company and this was not done accurately. And that's why we were asking Adams to make these corrections. And we issued a letter of correction stating that for them to make those corrections in this. And it was issued on November 26, 2024. For the outside grade should be lowered 3 inches below exterior wood siding Steps, porches, and ground slab should be treated as per label directions. Masonry voids should be treated as per label directions. And then outside foundation wall should be treated as per label directions. And that was at the time before that this was actually under policy and it wasn't a new contract, even though we did have an invoice that was only charging for a clearance letter and did say that it was under policy. So there was some confusion on our part. And then once we got the information back and found out later on, when Mr. Lyons looked into it a little further, that it was 2008 that they originally had treated the property.
Again, we tried, we wanted to,
So I mean,
as the state asked us to do, we was trying to get it done.
Does Adams do a yearly termite inspection on this property? And every
Yeah, we
year-
have,
I mean, every year you've done a yearly.
yeah,
termite
inside, yeah, inside now. And there's nothing been in the past notes of anything.
When does that typically occur? What month? I mean, is that
Well, whatever
I'd say-
it occurred, now it's gonna be,
Now it would be when he closed.
August.
It could have been a different month.
Right.
Seth, you have a comment?
well, I was just gonna, no, I think we're good.
Also, I just point out poor documentation again. I mean, you keep seeing this. But if you look at their invoice, time in 12:07, time out 12:07. Just leads me to believe that the paperwork was just written up. Because there's too many things, too many outliers. The building size is wrong, the treatment's wrong, the time's wrong, everything's wrong.
And Seth, I guess the other question I had, so the only, the letter of correction that was issued to Adams is pretty much the only.
That was the only thing that, from a regulatory standpoint, that we could do, typically, and we deal, this is basically our bread and butter for the pest control program, is dealing with these, and letters of correction, and, or excuse, letters of clearance, wood destroying insect reports are where we have most of our complaints, and where we provide a lot of consumer protection. Where it makes it difficult is if we're contacted on the back end after a lot of deconstruction's done, whatever is not in place for us to observe, because we can only use as a regulatory, from what I've understood from a regulatory perspective, and is that based off the evidence that we collected. We can provide that information after we conclude what corrective actions we can request of the termite company, or if we can't, whatever the information is, we can provide that evidence to the property owner and then allow them to pursue it through legal means, which we are not able to put a dollar amount on the amount of loss that he would have lost. So even with damage replacement, we can't say that it's gonna be X amount of dollars, or so it's gotta be come to an impasse. That's where they have to get civilly and work that out if they can't agree on it.
That is, go ahead.
I do have a question, and I haven't seen or known anything, but does Adams Pest Control have any previous violations or anything of this type of nature in the past?
Yes, I mean, and I will speak for more.
Similar, not necessarily of anything, just similar to this is my question.
I don't know that they have, I mean, as far as having inaccurate reports written by agents,
Record
that is. But
Things like that.
yeah, I mean, there has been instances of that they've been corrected. We don't have any outstanding. Typically, they're handled either through a letter of correction or a substandard report, depending on where the company is with working with the customer. If there's an impasse, and there's, mutual disagreements and they've been trying to work it out, we start off with a letter of correction, which isn't even a substandard report. And then it goes to a substandard report if they can't get their letter of correction completed within the 30 days.
And then, I'm not in the pest control industry at all, but I am in agriculture, and my record keeping is very, it's hard to do, it's difficult, but. We have a lot of process to make that where it's very detailed because of situations that arise, so. I was just curious about record keeping as far as pest control goes, my question.
Oh, okay, record keeping is not as detailed as it may be in the future, in the requirements.
Is this something that we might need to be?
I think it's already being handled
Okay.
with the new changes that are possibly going to go.
We have rule changes, but it's mainly applies to the pesticide application
Yeah.
aspect.
pest control business. It doesn't really address contractual.
Yeah, but you know,
Cross your
seeing,
Ts and dot your Is.
drawings and time in, time out thing, I mean, those are things that we have to do as far as agriculture. I feel like it should be exactly the same. I mean, they're doing a job, it needs to be.
Well, and
Documented
that's,
properly.
and that's why we issued the substandard report out and a letter of correction and then a substandard report. It typically involves an inspection fee. Those can go up to $650. If they don't get the work corrected and bring it up like it's supposed to be as per their, contractual obligations. And this one said, since it did state that they were gonna apply the treatment, obviously, there was talk about the amount was obviously not going to be enough for the size of the building. There's questions about, how big the actual building is compared to the very modest size that they wrote on the contract. The gentleman, Mr. Gavin, I guess, wrote on the contract. I don't know. But yes, there are corrective actions that we request for them to make when these things do happen, because not all employee business are going to be doing their due diligence and using these tools and utilizing them that way. But this Adams is not the only company that we have open case files on currently dealing with this same type of situation. Letters of clearance not being written correctly, that it costs probably termite companies more money when we catch them and their techs having letters of clearance written incorrectly than they would like to have done in the state of Arkansas. We are the only state that has these strict laws and regulations.
So I think there's two things going. There's the question of damage responsibility. And then there's the question of contractual obligations as they were written treatment. Based on staff's assessment, we had to make a no call on the damage. We're not saying is or is not responsible. We're making essentially a no call because there's deconstruction right before they got there. So the inspectors, they're both here, just couldn't say, yes, this was visible and should have been noted, makes Adams responsible. We're just saying we can't make the call here. As far as the treatment issue, we made the call there. We did determine, and they've admitted clerical errors. They got rid of the guy, he left, they fired him, I don't know what they did with him, but he made a mistake. And they've attempted to correct that. And as far as I'm hearing, they weren't allowed back on the property to do the treatment they're obligated to do. So that's where we are today. I mean.
Yeah, I feel for Mr. Martin. I think this is just a situation, I guess I see from both sides, but I don't know what we as a committee or board can do really.
Well,
I
so
mean, I guess there are things.
you ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
But, I'm sure there's some things we can do, or some changes we can make that could maybe make this not happen again in the future.
And I think that's kind of what you were asking for, and at least, so I think you understand, and as I understand anyway, we're pretty limited. This group, this committee is very limited in terms of this, as Scott said, this is not a hearing for us to say who's in the right here, so.
I just wanted to bring it to your
We're here to
attention.
listen, yeah.
Yeah.
So are we all comfortable with sort of the facts? Scott, you did a good job of kind of summing it up where we're at right now. Thank
We
you.
definitely understand your
So-
point.
Appreciate that. Any final questions? Or Mr. Martin, I'll ask you, because you did request this.
Yeah.
I mean, anything final you want to say?
I mean, I would just think like, use the technology that we have. I mean, this could have been simple. Take a picture with your iPhone, it date and timestamps it. Take pictures of your treatments. You know what I'm saying? That would be something the board could implement very easily, and then it's all documented. Every picture on your iPhone is date and timestamp with metadata that shows where you were at when you took the picture. That's a really simple solution that doesn't cost anybody anything, but it would help their case in the future.
And I would say for my part, I mean, I think you brought it to the right people, the folks working for the Department of Agriculture. The inspecting group they do a good job, and they're always willing to listen and make improvements if we can, so.
Well, this is not an unusual situation. We routinely over the years, and I started out in pest control, and this is one of the most difficult aspects of that consumer protection program, is trying to resolve these damage issues. As a state, if we didn't do it, and no other state does it, in any other state, you gotta get a lawyer and fight for yourself. So we've been pretty successful. We've resolved a lot of damage issues for property owners. But there's always a situation where we don't get called in time, or we can't gather enough evidence, and we can't make a call. And unfortunately, this is one of those.
In this situation, from the plant board's point of view, it would have been better if they'd have pulled one piece of sheetrock off, saw something and said, whoa, we need to get somebody in here to look at this.
Yes,
Okay.
that could have been much more beneficial. But unfortunately, most property owners out there don't have any idea that we have this program or that we do this.
Well, that was one more question I had, is it available as a property purchaser to have a plant board inspector come out and accompany the site inspector, so you'd have 2 points of view on a new property inspection, and there may be too many for y'all to
There
do
would
that,
be ways
but I
around
just
it.
wondered if
How many
I've got.
letter of clearances y'all
We
do?
did 3,500 last year.
well, I mean, it's up to the property owner. I didn't say it should be required. I said if the property owner requests it.
If we respond to all those requests.
Yeah.
So if any property owner calls
if you
in
can-
and asks, we show.
If you can come out after there's a problem, you know, and I'm not saying you should be required to be there. I said, are you available if
Yes,
asked?
yes. Yeah, we respond to all complaints and requests. But again, unfortunately, most property owners don't have
Yeah, I understand.
any idea that we do this.
I've been through the same thing.
Yeah,
You know, I know.
they start finding damage and they
Yeah.
start, just like he did, I would have done the same thing. They just start finding this damage, or they're remodeling anyway, and they just keep tearing until they get to the end of it. And then the next thing you know, they do find out about us, but by the time that's happening, we get there, you know, we can't make an assessment on the front end as to
Right.
whether.
I
it's-
I've
understand
dealt with
that
this
point.
exact same thing on a property that I purchased as well, so I've kind of, I know the exact situation.
We're open with the customer, like. Bring up the Department of Agriculture all the time. And we do take pictures of our treatments because of failed employees in the past.
And I can vouch for the fact that they do send customers our way if they don't agree with them, that type of thing. Adams is, I'm gonna say, they just send us information on it. I think, and we'll send our inspector supervisor, if he has a problem with the customer, hey, you may be getting a call from XYZ. I mean, we don't keep a record of who we may be getting a call from or whatever, but they have done that throughout the years, this particular branch. So I mean, that's just this one thing. They are always, you know, they're always worried about us coming after them because of course they've had to do damage claims or they've had, you know, things and people say things, that type of thing. And that happens with other pest control companies as well. So I can't say that this is a unique situation. It's an unfortunate situation. It's not one that I know that we would be able to stop. It's more one that we can take action against. But if I was to have the biggest problem with us being to inspect with a letter of clearance when they're doing a WDIR is it may be multiple companies bidding on that property. And then we get into we're giving a letter of clearance rather than the companies that are licensed to do that. And then we're overstepping our regulatory ability by performing an inspection of a letter of clearance. We're basically okaying the letter of clearance, and if anything goes wrong, then it's gonna come back on our inspectors, where we're actually supposed to be just checking the work that these companies are licensed to do. They're the actual professionals.
All right, I did want to check with Kyle Bolts or John Beerbaum. I know you're both on Zoom. Do you have any other questions?
No additional questions other than what y'all have asked.
Thank you.
On our post treatments at Adams and North Little Rock, say if it's a pre-existing and we're doing a post treatment, when we're doing a treatment, we take pictures. We have for the last few years, I don't know exactly how many years, and they are uploaded. We do take the pictures of that. We don't do we don't take pictures of the inspections unless it's something that we run across that we see is a problem, that we can be able to, on a clearance letter, go ahead and forward. Anybody has any questions, pictures of any damage, moisture, fungus that we find up underneath the house, we do that. But there is treatment. This one here is 08, we wasn't doing it then, you know. Guys, I mean, when you buy a house that's already built, you can only do so much inspecting on it as you can. Anybody, you have home inspectors, they look at them, you know, then, you know, here we come in looking at for termite damage and all that. We can, again, I mean, I'm beating the dead horse to death. We can only report what we see. In this structure, there was nothing. It's like Seth said, if I have a problem with anybody, one of you guys, I go to your house and we're in a disagreement and I call them and say, hey, you may get a phone call from Mr. Johnson. This is what I see. You guys look at it. If he calls you, tell me what you guys want me to do. I'll take care of it. I've always done that.
All right, thank you. So at this point, it's up for committee discussion. Scott or Seth, would you mind kind of telling us again what our options are or next actions potentially for this group?
As I understand it, Travis is just basically wanting to bring to y'all's attention the situation. And ask that, you consider, if I understood it right, maybe, you know, looking at some regulatory changes, maybe some stricter requirements on reporting, accuracy of contract, things like that. That would require rulemaking. Y'all wanted to discuss that. I feel like our rule is pretty solid. I feel like we have some very strict contractual requirements, more so than any other state that I know of. It's just a matter of, you know, they made a mistake and an employee made a mistake. And I don't know that it would require any more action from us other than what we did. I mean, we responded and made the best call we can make with the evidence that was available.
Yeah, I
ask
think
them
any rule changing or anything like that we would propose obviously would require first, I think, staff to really give us clear recommendations on what can work. And I mean, I heard one and now
Well, I would leave it with Mark to discuss with Seth and maybe review these rules and determine if there is a need for an adjustment or a rulemaking proposal to come back to the committee. I'm leaving in June, so it will not be something I'll carry forward because I'm retiring, but Mark and Seth can certainly do that at the request of the committee, and maybe they can report back to y'all at a later date after they've reviewed the pest control rules, and if they have a recommendation, or if they have a recommendation. That's something that y'all could do and move forward. In the meantime, I think the program just continues to do what it does. It assesses each case on a case-by-case basis, gathers the evidence they can find, and any liability they find on the pest control business, they issue those substandard treatments and tell them to more or less, you need to fix it.
Well, I got a question. Mr. Martin, you spent $250,000.
Yes.
Well, it's gonna be almost like a new building.
Oh, it's brand new.
So when somebody comes in there to treat all of this, is it gonna be like a new building then?
Pre-existing, it's still post.
I mean, if you take it down to the slab or the foundation,
Yes.
maybe, but I mean, a termite company would have to be there the whole step of the way to bring it up to like 100% coverage. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Like
the building-
pre-treat coverage.
The building
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
has,
Like pre-treat, you're asking if it's gonna be considered like pre-treat coverage.
Even y'all that had it under contract since 08? It's
Yeah.
still-
I mean, I'd have to be there with Mr. Martin on the whole project, to see what it was taken down to. If there's any old material still left, it's still gonna be a existing structure. But like I said, if he brought it down all the way and for us, if he brought it all the way down to the foundation, whether it's a crawl or a slab, we're starting up.
And then they'd have to perform a treatment method that was approved for it to be a pre-treat. So it would have to be brought down to the structure would have to be brought down to the studs, and possibly a borate treatment could be performed at that time. But most pre-treats are done before a slab or foundation's put down. So to get termiticide underneath that slab, you can't really say that you pre-treated underneath the slab. If you didn't do that, you can do an above ground pre-treatment of the wood members that are above ground. So it is a limitation there, and some companies don't trust those treatments, so they won't. But it's really the company's decision on what kind of contract they issue at that point, if there's an existing slab still there.
So just so you know, 75% of the building was taken down. 3 of the 4 walls were removed completely and rebuilt. And we do have a pre-treatment in place. The building is finished now. So it's been pre-treated and treated inside out, forward, every which way you can do it.
By another company.
Yes.
And I did issue it as a pre-treat. I just want to make sure for you, your purposes, okay? Then you probably have a very solid contract then if you've got a pre-treat contract. That's the most coverage you can have on a property, so.
We do make notes, the people that do some reconstruction or something, if we know there's fresh wood there, we do make note of that, and if termites ever got into it, we replace that. But, you know, it's about as 100% as you can get.
I've looked at houses when they opened it up, whatever, because if it's pre-existing, there was damage, I go back before they close it up, look at it. And then when they close it up, after they close it up, I go back and look at it, and I change the policy from there.
I just have one question. Seth, maybe you can help me with this. Do any states have any type of inspection documentation requirements similar to what Mr. Martin suggested? As far as the photography of the inspection?
I don't know that they have a requirement that the operators keep that, but I can't say for certain for every state. I know they don't have the damage replacement requirement that we do. They don't get into damage replacement. As far as termite damage, I really don't believe there are any states that have as strict of requirements as we do for the documentation they have to keep when issuing these letters of clearance. Some states don't even make them stand by the letters of clearance for more than 30 days. So we make them issue a contract and stand by that letter of clearance for 1 year in the state of Arkansas.
Thank you.
All right, so, I guess, you know, having been on the larger board for a few years now, I do feel comfortable that the staff would, I mean, if there were changes that they saw were necessary and recommended, they would certainly bring that to us. And I think that starts with the inspectors as well, they're on the front line, so. Again, I don't know what we want to propose at this time, other than to continue to encourage the program to assess, you know, the processes we have in place and ensure that those are happening.
And yes, we would love to be able to eliminate these kind of situations. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't stop people from doing something incorrectly, even in their case, having an agent, or even if it was one of them, you know, we as a regulatory body can't make them not do it. We can only say that these are what you're supposed to do. And then if they don't do correct, do what we can from a regulatory standpoint to make those make those corrections. And that's what we try to do fairly and try to be unbiased as we can be, because so much stuff now can be faked. So that's why we have to base it off of our inspectors' reports. We've got to be very careful about that, especially today's current technology.
Any final discussion on this? Yeah, I think at this point, our options are pretty limited. All right, so other item on the agenda is other business. If there's any other business to bring to the committee. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion with adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Recording stopped.